I hope some religious people watch this video, some Christians. Because what I'm about to say is very important. So a lot of Christians think that atheists are happy that there's not a God, right? They think, from what I've heard of Christians talking about atheists, many Christians seem to think that atheists have some kind of bias, that we have an ulterior motive for not believing in God, because we prefer there not to be a God, right? We hear Christians say this, we atheists, the atheists don't want to believe in God because they don't want to be accountable to some higher authority. And so they have to, they're suppressing the truth, right? Christians say that atheists are suppressing the truth because they want to be their own God, and they want to, they want to do all this stuff and not have to, live as basically a slave to God. Because that's kind of what God is. He's a slave master, right? If there's a God that's the most powerful being and he can punish you and he can send you to hell and he can do all these things, then God is essentially a big tyrannical slave master, and we have to do whatever he says or we're screwed. We're going to be punished, right? Now, maybe that is true for some atheists. Maybe some atheists would prefer there not to be a God so they can do whatever they want, right? But that is not me. And many of the atheists I've talked to are not happy that there's not a God. In fact, we wish there was a God. Okay, I'm an atheist. I don't believe in God at all, but I'm someone who wishes there was a God. I mean, you think that I'm happy about the idea of dying and ceasing to exist? That is a horrible thing. And to the atheist, life is kind of, a nightmarish thing because we don't feel like we have any safety net. Christians, they feel like they have an existential safety net. They're going to die and they get a second life. And basically, that's a huge comfort to the Christian. So I think that the Christians are the ones with the bias here. The Christians are the ones that pretend to be so certain of their God because it gives them extreme comfort. If I believed in God, I'd have comfort too from it. It was comforting. I mean, when I believed in God, it was a great comfort to me to think that there's an afterlife. But, these Christians who accuse me of having a bias, a prejudice against God because I don't want a tyrannical ruler over me, an authority that I have to, bow down to. That's just not true because, in fact, I've thought about this, and I would much prefer to live in a world where there was, where I had no freedom, where I was a slave to whatever higher power. If that meant that I could live forever, I would gladly exchange my freedom, my autonomy for, the ability to live forever. I'd much rather the Christian story be true, but I don't think it is. It's just wishful thinking. So, yeah, just that idea that I don't have this ulterior motive to be an atheist. It's just my brain is literally not convinced of the truthfulness of the claim that there's a God. And it's not my fault. That's another thing that bothers me about Christianity. Christians act like being an atheist is my choice. Like I had a choice in the matter. I chose to be an atheist. No. I didn't choose to be an atheist. My brain is just convinced that atheism is true, and it's not my choice. My brain is just convinced that evolution is true. Okay, I didn't choose to believe these things. It's involuntary. Atheism is just an involuntary disbelief in God because our brain requires evidence. I look around and I don't see any evidence of this God that these Christians claim exists. And so my brain demands evidence before I believe something like that. And so, which gets me to the next point, which is that Christians and the Christianity claims that the judgment and salvation of a person is determined by what they believe, right? Christians say that I'm disqualified from salvation because I'm an atheist. I don't believe, I don't have faith. Therefore, I'm damned, according to Christianity. And I have to ask myself, are these Christians, do they realize how stupid and ridiculous that sounds? Because you do realize that you're saying God, your God that you believe in and you're touting, that God would punish and reward people for something that is entirely outside of their own control. Okay? Belief is not within someone's control. You don't just choose what you believe. You don't pick your beliefs, based upon, it doesn't work that way. Belief is not that way. So belief isn't a choice. And so you're telling me that people are, that I'm damned for something I had no control over. I didn't choose to be an atheist, so it makes your whole religion look absolutely foolish and ridiculous. You guys, Christians, if any Christians watching this, I hope you realize that. You're to a sensible person with common sense, Christianity should look completely ridiculous. The red flag should go up immediately when someone finds out that your whole judgment and reward system is based on the criteria of someone's belief. That's just so silly. I've thought about that if there was a God, it wouldn't make sense for God to judge people by their beliefs. It would make sense if God was fair, if God was a just, fair God, then it would make sense for God to judge people by what they did, okay, their behaviors. That is the only good criteria for judging a person, judging the worthiness of a human being. And, because belief isn't a virtue. Belief is not faith. It shouldn't count for anything. That's stupid. And people shouldn't be punished for not believing. I mean, that's just so unjust and unfair. Your God that you're believing in is evil. Okay, your God is evil. So, yeah, think about it. Okay, I try to be a great person. I try to live by, extremely strict moral code. Not hurting people, doing the best I can to help other people. And, okay, so you guys are telling me that your God is going to punish me, disqualify me from eternal life. Oh, because I didn't believe. Meanwhile, you guys say that evil people can be saved, rapists and serial killers. They get to go to heaven because they believed and they had faith. And so God can forgive those people because they had faith, but God can't forgive someone like me, an atheist, because I'm an atheist. I mean, do you know how stupid that is? In fact, if there was a fair, just God, it would make sense for his salvation process to be exclusively based on people's behaviors, and that's the only way to determine if someone's actually a good person, not whether they had faith or whatever. And just the idea of, an atonement, that is not just either. That someone can just, be a scapegoat for, to forgive other people's sins. That's not fair. Someone should have to atone for their own sins. If someone did something bad, they should have to pay the consequences, not some scapegoat. That is what you guys are making Jesus out to be. So that's just some thoughts I had recently about religion and Christianity. And the last thing I want to say is that Christians, you guys say that you're fans of eternal life. You guys say you're so happy about eternal life and you love your eternal life. That's what Christianity is supposed to be about, right? Eternal life. But you guys you don't, you with your actions, you show that you don't really care about eternal life. Because if you really cared about eternal life, you wouldn't gamble your eternal life on some presumption that there's a God. Because a smart, intelligent person, a rational, reasonable person would realize and admit that God is nothing more than a hypothesis. It's hypothetical conjecture. That's why I started my Facebook page, Doubt God. Because God is a hypothetical conjecture and can't be anything more than a hypothetical conjecture. Christians, the way I see it, they are just pretending to be certain of God so that they can be comforted in regards to their own death and mortality. It's great. It's comforting to think that there's a life after death, but it's hypothetical wishful thinking, which is why Christians, if they really cared about eternal life, if any religious person really cared about eternal life, they would be more like a transhumanist. They would try to live forever physically in this world, the only world that we know exists. Because, your life is too important to risk on some assumption. So, the way I see it, Christians are posers. They don't really care about eternal life because they expose themselves with their actions. They're not trying to cure aging. Why aren't you trying to cure aging, Christians? Why are some Christians even against the idea? They're against the idea of curing aging and living forever on this planet. They think it's playing God or something. That's not smart. It's not smart to accept death. And I'll tell you why I think that many Christians are so accepting of death. Well, of course, it's the afterlife. And they're looking forward to even a better life than this, right? They think they're going to get a second life. And it removes their fear of death. And it's really, really dumb. It's not smart. And they actually like the idea of getting old and dying. I've talked to many Christians. I'm not just making this stuff up. Many Christians tell me they are happy that they're going to get old and die because, that's a way to get to heaven without having to kill yourself. If it wasn't for aging, you'd just keep on living and living and living. And if you ever wanted to die, you'd have to kill yourself. But Christians would prefer there to be some natural process that can just kill them, slowly with aging. They want to die. They're suicidal. The whole Christian mindset is suicidal. It's a death cult. That's really what it is. Christianity, religion, all the religions, most of them, any religion that preaches the afterlife and preaches the acceptance of death is a death cult. I'm calling it out because it's something that needs to be judged. All right? I'm judging it. Religions, dying is mainstream. How stupid is that? Don't die. If you want to be smart, if you want to be a smart person, then try to live forever, physically, in this world. Because if you die because you think there's some afterlife, and you're just a fool. You're a stupid idiot. And you deserve non-existence. If you die because you think there's an afterlife and you get non-existence, you get an eternal oblivion because you were so arrogantly confident of your afterlife and your God, then death and non-existence is exactly what you deserve because you were a poser. You didn't really care about eternal life.